I found out my sister cut me out of Mom's will while holding tulips in the checkout line, for Mom's birthday. They were yellow. Her favorite. I was already picturing how I'd arrange them in that chipped white vase she always kept on the kitchen window, next to the hummingbird feeder. It was going to be a small moment, just me, some flowers, and a visit to the cemetery later that afternoon. Then my phone buzzed. Confirming final will filed today, per conversation with your sister. Let me know if you need anything further. Holbrook, our family attorney. My chest went tight. What conversation? I stepped out of line and called him right there in the middle of Safeway, flowers still in one hand, purse dangling from the other. He picked up on the second ring. Megan? I just got your message, I said. I don't understand, what do you mean the will was filed? There was a pause. Your sister said you were aware of the changes. That you chose not to be involved due to estrangement. I blinked. What? She mentioned you'd been distant in the final years, he continued, a little hesitantly. And that you weren't in a place emotionally to handle things. Mental health concerns. She was listed as primary executor, so we moved forward. My grip on the tulips tightened. A few petals crumpled in my fist. Mental health concerns, I repeated flatly. That's what she said? Yes, he said gently. Was that not accurate? I didn't answer. Because I was already walking, right out of the store, bouquet forgotten at the self-checkout stand. 3 weeks earlier, I had been at Mom's house helping her out of bed, her legs swollen, her breath shallow. I'd been there nearly every day since her diagnosis, prepping meals, managing meds, making sure the nurse showed up on time. I took a leave from work. I drove her to every doctor's appointment. I held her hand when they said the cancer had spread. I hate being a burden, she whispered once. You're not, I told her. I want to be here. She squeezed my hand, then looked up at me. You're my steady one. Ellie showed up twice during those 6 months. Once at Thanksgiving, in heels too high for a snowy driveway. Once for the funeral, 40 minutes late. Both times, she brought charcuterie. And both times, she smiled like she was doing us all a favor just by existing. That night, I drove straight to the attorney's office. Holbrook looked surprised when I marched in, no appointment, no makeup, still in my work scrubs. Megan, he said, rising from his desk. I wasn't expecting. Did you see this? I dropped a folder on his desk. Inside, copies of hospital visit logs, receipts from Walgreens for prescriptions in Mom's name, photos of her in my car after chemo. And birthday cards, 10 years of them, each one signed in Mom's loopy handwriting with some version of, "Thank you for taking care of me. I don't know what I'd do without you." And then, the email chain, a dozen messages from Mom asking me to pick up soup, to fix the hummingbird feeder, to come sit on the porch with her just for a minute. He scanned through the pile, eyes narrowing. Megan, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Ellie made it sound like you hadn't spoken in years. I let out a dry laugh. Yeah. I bet she did. Growing up, Ellie was always the golden child. She had that kind of shine, perfect smile, expensive taste, and a way of speaking like she'd already won the argument. Even when we were kids, she'd swan into the room and suddenly everyone else looked unfinished. And Mom, to her credit, tried to make it fair. But Ellie knew how to wrap people around her finger. When we were 12 and 13, she convinced our mom I was the one who broke the patio window. I hadn't even been home that day. Ellie cried and said she didn't want to get me in trouble. That was her thing. Fake kindness, real control. The night of the funeral, Ellie pulled me aside in the kitchen. Her voice was soft, almost maternal. I'm going to take care of all the paperwork, she said. You've done so much already. I'll handle the legal side, just rest, okay? I remember blinking at her, stunned. It was the first kind thing she'd said to me in years. I should have known. It wasn't kindness. It was cover. Back in the present, I sat on the couch that night staring at a printed copy of the will. Ellie's name was everywhere. Mine? Nowhere. Not even a mention. She got the house. The retirement accounts. The jewelry box passed down from our great-grandmother. The same box Mom gave me the year she turned 75, saying, "You'll pass this to your daughter one day." I walked to the garage and dug through the bin where I'd stored Mom's files, tax forms, estate planning notes, journals. And buried beneath an old crocheted scarf was a folder labeled Original Will, 2021. My hands trembled. I opened it. And there it was. My name. Right beside Ellie's. Equal share. In Mom's own handwriting. Stapled behind it was a newer version, typed, clean, cold. The one Holbrook had filed. No signature on the first page. Just an X scrawled on the final line. A signature that didn't even come close to Mom's usual script. I stared at it for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and called Ellie. She picked up after the fourth ring. Meg. Oh. Wow. Didn't expect to hear from you. You told Holbrook I wasn't close to Mom, I said. She was silent for a beat. Well, it wasn't not true. You've had a hard few years. I didn't think you'd want the stress. You told him I had mental health issues. Another pause. Then, light and breezy, I might have said you'd been through some things. I was trying to protect you. You filed a new will without me. I filed Mom's wishes, she said, voice sharp now. She told me in the hospital she didn't want you stressing over money. She wanted things to be simple. She never said anything like that. Well, she said it to me, Megan. I'm sorry you're upset, but it's done. Let's not drag this into some courtroom drama. You know that's not your strength. My breath caught. She still thought I'd lie down. That I'd be the quiet one. The helper. The shadow to her spotlight. You're going to regret this, I said, voice cold and steady. Oh, sweetheart, she said, laughing. That's adorable. 3 days later, I showed up to the reading of the will. Uninvited. Dressed in black. No makeup. Just tired eyes and a manila envelope in my hand. Holbrook looked up, startled. Ellie blinked like she'd seen a ghost. I sat at the back of the conference room, silent while he read the terms aloud. When he got to the sole beneficiary part, Ellie sat up a little straighter. That's when I stood and placed the envelope on the table. What's this? He asked. Evidence, I said. Fraud. Medical records. Caregiver logs. And the original will, the one she signed with both of our names on it. Holbrook opened it. His face changed. And Ellie? She didn't say a word. But I saw her jaw tighten. That night, I sat on the floor of Mom's bedroom, the one I'd cleaned, organized, rearranged for her comfort in her last months. I ran my hands along the quilt she used to pull up to her chin. Then I reached under the bed. There, tucked in a shoebox, were more letters. One envelope, sealed and yellowed, was labeled. To Megan, if anything happens. My heart hammered in my chest. I tore it open. Inside, in Mom's shaky cursive. If Ellie does what I think she might, don't let her win. I didn't go to the family brunch Ellie hosted the week after the will was filed. I saw the pictures, though. Someone tagged me by accident in a group shot, the kind where everyone's smiling too wide and no one's really looking at each other. Ellie was front and center in a new blouse, pearl earrings, and that polished look she always wore when she knew people were watching. Behind her, my mom's china cabinet was visible. The one she once told me she'd leave me, because you actually know how to set a table, Meg. I stared at the photo for a long time before closing the app. I didn't call. I didn't argue. I didn't show up at her door demanding answers. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just went quiet. To anyone looking in, it probably seemed like I'd accepted it. That I'd backed off, taken my little defeat with grace. No one saw the box I pulled out from under my bed that week. The one labeled Mom's Life. No one saw me scan every birthday card, every medical form, every grocery list with her scribbled notes at the bottom. No one saw the email folders I opened, the ones I hadn't touched in over a year, filled with old threads between Mom and me. Photos of us from hospital waiting rooms. A recording of her voice asking me to bring lemon cough drops. Not dramatic. Not showy. Just evidence. I cleared my calendar. Took time off. Even stepped back from the church committee I'd helped lead for years. I let people assume I was grieving, that I needed space. They dropped off casseroles and quiet sympathy. No one asked questions. Ellie certainly didn't. She assumed I was licking my wounds. She assumed I was done. She wasn't subtle about her victory. I overheard from a neighbor that she'd moved a few of her boxes into Mom's house, excuse me, her house now, and was telling people she might turn it into an Airbnb on the weekends. No sense in leaving it empty, she apparently said. I heard that and had to step into my pantry and close the door just to scream into a dish towel. And the worst part? The people who went along with her. Neighbors who smiled at her on the sidewalk. An old family friend who posted, "Proud of you, Ellie. Your mom would be so happy seeing you handle things with such maturity." I sat on my couch reading that with my mouth open. Maturity. That word hit me like a slap. I was the one who cut up her food when her hands started shaking. I was the one who changed her sheets when the meds made her nauseous. I was the one who stayed. But now Ellie got the praise. She got the house, the jewelry, the public story, and I got the silence. For a little while, I let it be. I didn't respond to messages. I didn't go to the dinners I used to organize. I didn't speak unless I had to. And the quiet was louder than I expected. My kids noticed. "Are you okay, Mom?" My son asked one evening while I was folding laundry I hadn't touched in days. "I'm just tired, baby," I said, pressing a towel into a neat square. "Nothing for you to worry about." But I did start seeing someone. Quietly. A local counselor named Rita who didn't ask too many questions at first. Just listened. She had soft eyes and sat with her hands folded patiently, letting me unravel the story on my terms. She said I was unstable, I told her during our third session. "Did she say that to your face?" "No. To our attorney. To justify removing me." Rita didn't react with horror or surprise. She just asked, "And how did that feel?" I stared at the wall behind her. Like someone took a shovel to my history and buried it alive. In the silence that followed, I realized something. I wasn't grieving anymore. Not my mother, not even the betrayal. I was preparing. One afternoon, I drove past Mom's house. Ellie was out front, laughing with a man I didn't recognize. Her voice carried across the lawn, too loud, too cheerful. The kind of performative joy that made my stomach twist. As I passed, she glanced toward my car. Our eyes met for a second. I gave a small nod. She didn't wave. Just turned back to her company like I wasn't there. That was the moment I knew, she thought she'd won. She truly believed I was irrelevant now. But I hadn't come to gawk. I'd come for the garage code. Mom had told me once that she never changed it after Dad died, too many memories attached. If Ellie hadn't bothered yet, it was still the same. I waited until dusk. The house was dark. No car in the driveway. I parked 2 blocks down and walked through the alley. The keypad blinked red at first. I typed it in again, 0427. Mom's birthday. The light turned green. Inside the garage, I found what I was looking for in 10 minutes, a locked filing cabinet. One I remembered from years ago, tucked behind her old sewing machine. I knew where the key was. Mom kept it inside a hollowed-out book in the upstairs office, a trick she thought was clever. I didn't need to take the whole cabinet. Just the folder labeled Estate Planning, Final. Back home, I didn't open it right away. I made tea. Turned on the radio. Sat down slowly. Only then did I flip it open. Inside were 2 versions of the will. One signed, one not. The signed one was dated a full year before Ellie claimed she'd had it redone. And the signature wasn't just different, it was witnessed by 2 people I knew. Old friends of my mom's from church. People who would never sign anything if they thought I wasn't included. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I had her. The next morning, I made a phone call to a lawyer I knew outside of Holbrook's firm. Someone independent. Someone who didn't know Ellie and hadn't been pulled into her charm campaign. Her name was Patrice Denton, and she didn't sound particularly impressed with what I told her. She faked a will and claimed you were estranged, she repeated. Yes. Do you have proof? I have the original documents, emails, caregiver logs, witness names, and a recorded voicemail where Mom asks me to bring her groceries the same week Ellie says we weren't speaking. There was a pause. Then, can you be at my office Thursday at 9? I said yes. I didn't tell anyone. Not my ex-husband, not my kids, not my coworkers. I went to my appointment, handed Patrice the stack of files, and watched her eyebrows rise slowly as she flipped through each one. This is enough to open a case, she said. And depending on how the judge sees it, enough to prove fraud. Which would not only reinstate your share, it could result in penalties against your sister. I didn't smile. Not yet. Instead, I said quietly, she told me to accept that Mom didn't want me. Patrice looked at me for a long moment. Did she? I shook my head. She called me her rock. Patrice nodded once. Then let's show the court who really was there. Later that night, I received a text from Ellie. Ellie, heard you're stirring things up. Megan, don't do this. You're going to make yourself look ridiculous. I stared at it. Then set the phone down without replying. Let her sweat. Let her wonder. She thought silence meant surrender. She had no idea what it really meant. 2 days later, Patrice filed the petition to challenge the will. It was discreet, sent directly to probate court and copied to Holbrook for formal notice. I didn't make a show of it. Didn't post anything. But I knew Ellie would hear about it within hours. And she did. At exactly 6:12 p.m. that evening, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. I answered and stayed quiet. Are you seriously doing this? Her voice was sharp, clipped, a layer of panic poorly concealed behind her usual control. After everything I've done for you? You erased me from her life, I said. I did what Mom wanted. No, I said. You did what you wanted. And now I'm doing the same. You're being vindictive. I'm being thorough. You don't even care about the money. I laughed then, quietly. This isn't about money. It's about the truth. She scoffed, well, good luck proving anything. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Oh, I'm not relying on luck. Then I hung up. I didn't feel victorious yet. Just steady. Focused. Like I was holding a match I hadn't struck yet. But the fuel was ready. And in a few weeks, she'd see exactly what I'd built while she was busy celebrating my silence. The email came through while I was staring at the hummingbird feeder I still hadn't taken down. It was from Mom's bank, not the one Ellie used downtown, but the original branch Mom opened accounts at when we were kids. The subject line was dry, trust communication follow-up. But the second I opened it, my pulse changed. The message was short, formal, careful. It confirmed that a recent attempt to alter the Phillips Education Trust was declined due to signature inconsistencies and lack of updated beneficiary verification. I set my laptop aside, stood up, and walked straight to the sink. For a full minute, I gripped the edge of the counter and stared into the silver basin like it might give me an answer. My breath came in shallow waves. The trust was meant for Ellie's daughter. Mom had been so proud of that, she used to call it her quiet gift, a way of giving her granddaughter a future. And Ellie tried to take that, too. She was moving in on something Mom left untouched out of principle. That was when it hit me, this wasn't just about the will anymore. Ellie was trying to erase Mom's intention. She wasn't settling Mom's estate. She was rewriting her legacy. And for a moment, I cracked. I slid down to the kitchen floor, curled my knees to my chest, and cried in a way I hadn't since the night of the funeral. I wasn't crying for the trust, or even for the betrayal, I was crying for all the versions of my mother Ellie would never let exist publicly. The versions that were funny, stubborn, compassionate, and deeply organized about her affairs. Ellie wanted a version of Mom that could be manipulated on paper. I had the real one in memories and email threads and post-it notes stuck to old prescription bottles. It felt like carrying a secret the world had forgotten, and I wasn't going to let that stand. The next morning, I met with Patrice again. I brought every document I had, but I also brought something else, a letter Mom wrote me 6 months before she passed. I hadn't shown anyone. Not even my therapist. It was handwritten, 1 page, folded into thirds. The ink was fading, but the words still struck like thunder. If something happens to me, and Ellie gets grabby, don't let her run the show. You were here. You know me. Let the truth be loud. I handed it to Patrice. She wrote this when she was lucid, I said, voice thick but steady. She gave me this when I was helping her organize the linen closet. Just slipped it into my hand and said, you'll know when to use it. Patrice read the whole thing, then set it down with care. I think that time is now. We began preparing for court. Quietly. Thoroughly. I didn't announce it. I didn't post. I didn't even mention it to my kids, not until everything was in motion. I was calm, methodical, and somehow more focused than I'd been in years. Each document I scanned, each folder I labeled, felt like a brick in a wall I was finally building between me and the years I'd spent being the lesser sister. Still, I knew Ellie would smell something eventually. And sure enough, she did, just not in the way I expected. I was walking through the produce section at King Soopers when I heard her voice behind me. Well, isn't this cozy, she said. I turned. She was wearing designer sunglasses indoors, clutching a latte like she was posing for a lifestyle ad. Didn't expect to see you here, she added, her smile tight. I thought you'd moved to wherever sad sisters go to sulk. I kept my face neutral. I still live here, Ellie. Unlike you, I didn't use Mom's death as an excuse to buy a new zip code. Her smile didn't budge, but her eyes flashed. I'd be careful, Megan. People are starting to notice. This little phase of yours, it's getting awkward. Which part? I asked. The part where I contest a fraudulent will, or the part where your forged signature is about to be reviewed by a judge?" She laughed. Actually laughed. Loudly. A couple of heads turned. "Oh honey," she said, stepping closer. "You think you're in control of this? You're not. You never were. I was always the one Mom trusted with the big things. You were her comfort blanket." "That's not the same thing." I just stared at her. Then I said, "You're projecting, Ellie." She rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath, and turned away. But as she walked off, I saw it. That twitch in her shoulder. The way her stride stiffened. I had shaken her. And I wasn't done. That afternoon, I got a call from Linda, one of Mom's church friends. The same woman who'd witnessed the original will. "You should know," she said. "Ellie called me. She asked me not to get involved." "Did she threaten you?" "No. But she tried something worse. She offered to buy the antiques I inherited from your mom. The ones she promised I'd keep. When I said no, Ellie said it would be easier for everyone if I didn't go picking sides. That did it. I asked Linda if she'd write a statement. She did. A full-page affidavit, notarized and everything. That document became part of the submission Patrice filed the following week. The case had weight now, not just emotion. It had logic. It had law. It had momentum. But even still, I needed something more. So I returned to the house. Ellie was out of town again, this time a spa weekend with her grief support group, which I'm fairly certain was just a networking excuse. I waited until dusk and used the same garage code I'd tested before. The lights were off. The rooms were pristine. Soulless. I walked through the kitchen, past the new granite counters, down the hall, and into the bedroom where Mom had spent her last night. The bed was gone, replaced with a sleek platform frame and hotel white sheets. I opened the closet, not expecting much. But there, in the corner, behind a stack of old tax folders, was the ceramic figurine I made Mom in 2nd grade. A turtle. Lumpy. Painted pale green. One of the back legs had broken off, but she kept it anyway. Always called it lucky. I picked it up and turned it over. There was a folded note wedged inside. I unfolded it slowly. "Megan, if this is still here, then she never found it. This is your reminder, you didn't imagine it. I loved you with my whole, stubborn heart. Don't let anyone revise that." I didn't cry. I just sat on the floor, turtle in hand, and breathed. I left the house that night with the figurine wrapped in my scarf. It was all I took. The court hearing was scheduled for the following week. Ellie arrived with her lawyer, someone slick, younger, clearly expensive. She wore a soft gray pantsuit, her hair blown out, and carried a leather folio like she was chairing a board meeting. She didn't look at me as we sat on opposite sides of the courtroom. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed the documents for several minutes before speaking. "We're here to examine concerns surrounding the legitimacy of the most recent will submitted by Ms. Phillips." Her tone was direct, unemotional. Patrice stood and presented the timeline, the original will, the hospice care, the communication between Mom and me. She read excerpts from the letters. Then she introduced the statements from Linda and the nurses. Calm. Clinical. Devastating. When it was Ellie's turn, her lawyer spoke in smooth, practiced tones, saying that Mom frequently voiced concerns about Megan's stability, that Ellie had taken on the burden of organizing things when Megan failed to do so. The judge held up a hand. "Where is the notarized version of the updated will?" Ellie's lawyer hesitated. "It appears to be missing. We have the signed copy, but—" "Signed," the judge repeated, "but not notarized." "And witnessed by whom?" There was a beat of silence. "No one," her lawyer said finally. Then, the judge said, "We'll continue this matter in a full evidentiary hearing. And in the meantime, pending further review, all actions related to the estate are to be frozen effective immediately. That includes property transfers, trust modifications, and the sale of any belongings." Ellie finally turned to me. And her face, for the first time, was stripped of charm. She looked like a woman caught mid-lie, unsure where the exits were. Patrice leaned toward me and whispered, "That's the look of someone who just realized her story has an ending she didn't write." But I wasn't smiling. Not yet. Because I still had one card left. And it was the one she never saw coming. Ellie celebrated the court hearing like she'd already won. The champagne bottles clinked on Mom's front porch. I didn't see it in person, but a friend from the neighborhood texted me a blurry photo and a 2-word message, "She's gloating." Ellie was flanked by her lawyer, a woman I vaguely recognized from one of her church committees, and a man in a pinstripe suit who I assumed was another estate advisor. All of them smiling. Laughing. Ellie wore a cream blouse and heels on gravel, posing like she was in the final scene of a movie where the good daughter triumphs. She had no clue the credits were nowhere near rolling, not for me, and certainly not for her. The next morning, I filed a final, quiet submission through Patrice. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone, not even Kinley. It was a statement from an unexpected source, the retired estate attorney who'd handled Mom's affairs years ago, before Ellie ever sniffed around the financials. Patrice had tracked him down, and after reviewing the circumstances, he agreed to write a sworn declaration. In it, he recalled Mom's phone call expressing concern that Ellie had been asking about changing beneficiaries, pressuring me to consolidate documents, Mom had said. He noted that Mom reaffirmed her intention to split her estate equally. She even requested copies be sent to both daughters so there's no confusion. He did just that. And those copies still existed. Patrice filed it at 8:02 a.m. The hearing was expedited. Ellie never saw it coming. When the ruling day came, Ellie walked into the courtroom without the glow she had the last time. Her outfit was crisp, but her movements were tight, like the confidence had been pressed out of her overnight. She scanned the room with her lawyer at her side, but this time she didn't smile. She barely looked at me. She was rattled, and she knew it. The judge wasted no time. "I've reviewed all documents, supplemental statements, and prior testimony," she said, her voice firm. "What we have here is not just a question of validity. It is a question of intent, both the decedents and the executors." She laid it out cleanly. The will Ellie submitted lacked notarization and legal witnesses. Megan, me, had been proven an involved caregiver, contrary to Ellie's claims. The prior 2021 will, properly witnessed and stored with the estate attorney, reflected the decedent's clearly stated wishes. As such, it was reinstated as the binding version. Then came the moment that made my stomach flip. In light of the false claims and the attempt to override legal estate documentation, the judge continued, Eleanor Phillips's share of the estate will be reduced by 20%. That amount will be allocated, per the original language in the 2021 will, to the Phillips Grandchild Trust. Additionally, the court is referring this matter to the Colorado State Bar for investigation into will tampering and executor misconduct. Ellie's lawyer leaned in sharply, whispering something urgent. But Ellie just sat there. Her face froze, jaw slack, mouth parted like she was still searching for a comeback that wouldn't arrive. She had no idea I had updated the trust documents quietly through the original attorney, the one who handled it when Ellie's daughter was born. I hadn't touched the amount. I hadn't changed a line. I'd simply ensured that the money could no longer be touched without dual approval. Hers and mine. After the ruling, I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Not because I didn't want to see her face, but because I already had. It was the face of someone who thought they'd won because they shouted the loudest, only to realize the room was listening to someone else the whole time. The following days were quiet, but the consequences weren't. I didn't need to post about what happened. The whispers handled that for me. By Friday, I started getting messages, people from Mom's church, a few mutual contacts, even one of Ellie's event vendors who'd tried to work with her post-funeral. The story was out. The ruling had been public, and the fraud charge referral was being passed around by people who'd once called her so composed and the responsible one. One message stood out. It came from a woman named Marla, who ran the estate sale business Ellie tried to use for Mom's antiques. "Just wanted you to know," she wrote. "She asked me to lie and say certain items were gifted to her before your mom passed. I declined. She blocked me the next day. I'm sorry she did this to you." I sat with that message for a long time. Ellie had been willing to lie about everything, even furniture, to keep up her story. The fall didn't stop at embarrassment. One of Ellie's volunteer positions at a local nonprofit quietly ended. Her name was removed from their annual gala roster. A mutual acquaintance told me their board didn't want to be associated with estate controversy. And Ellie's employer, a mid-sized consulting firm where reputation mattered, put her on leave while the legal inquiry unfolded. I never gloated. Not publicly. But I did make one call, to the trustee overseeing the grandchild trust. I asked if I could contribute anonymously. They said yes. I added 10% of my estate portion, quietly, in Mom's name. Ellie would be notified as co-beneficiary manager. She would know exactly who secured her daughter's future while she was busy fighting to take everything else. A few weeks later, I ran into her by accident. Not a grocery store or the post office this time. It was in the hallway of the school where both our kids went, parent-teacher conference night. I hadn't expected her. She hadn't expected me either. We stopped a few feet apart, no one else nearby. She looked older. Not in the tired way, but in the exposed way. Like the sheen had worn off, and nothing was left but a face stripped of performance. She spoke first. "I suppose you're proud of yourself." I met her eyes. "No. But I'm proud of Mom." She let out a small, bitter breath. "You never knew how much she favored you." I tilted my head. "No. I knew how much she forgave you. And now I know why." She swallowed. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway like she wanted to escape. "She left you the better part of herself," I added quietly. "And you tried to turn it into leverage. You almost got away with it. But Mom always knew which daughter would tell the truth when it counted." She didn't answer. Just walked away without a word. I stood there for another minute, listening to the muffled chatter of other parents in classrooms, and then I turned and walked toward my daughter's conference, where my presence, my steadiness, still mattered more than anything in writing ever could. That weekend, I planted bulbs in Mom's old garden. Tulips. She always said they were the brave ones for blooming early, even when snow lingered. As I knelt in the soil, I thought about how many people had told me to let it go, to not make things messy, to keep peace. But peace isn't the absence of noise. Sometimes it's what comes after you make yourself heard. I cleaned my hands, stood up, and looked across the yard at the wind chime that still hung on the porch. It was Mom's, a rusty thing, made of stained glass and wire. When the wind caught it, the sound wasn't pretty. But it was unmistakably hers. They tried to erase me. All they did was give me a clean page. And I wrote the ending myself.